is Amy, and as far as glitches go, mine isn't a common one. Some might call it a medical disaster, but I'm still here to tell you about it and to tell you how I lost myself on my detours until I learned to follow them, even to embrace them. That's why I call myself a detourist, and I think you might be one too. 11 years ago, I thought I had my life all planned out. I was your typical teenage musical theater ham. I was headed to college and to Broadway, and my life was all planned out. Or so I thought. 2 weeks before my high school senior prom, a blood clot caused my stomach to explode. It literally hit the ceiling of the operating room. Both my lungs collapsed. I needed 122 units of blood. I almost died. When I woke up from a coma months later, doctors told me that I didn't have a stomach anymore. I couldn't eat or drink, and they didn't know if I'd ever be able to again. That was detour number 1, the explosion. Waking up in the ICU, only seeing the ceiling and hearing the beeping of IV pumps, I was devastated, but mostly confused, like I had woken up in someone else's life. Once I could move my fingers enough, I even tried to Google, how do I find myself? Everything felt strange and new. I felt like a child coming into the world for the very first time. This detour stopped my life in its tracks and made me start from scratch. But from scratch is where I found the first flower for my detour: gratitude. The more alert I became, the more I realized how much there was to be grateful for. Things like water. I missed water so much. Drinking it, touching it. In the hospital, the highlight of my day was when I was finally allowed to brush my teeth. Just through that soothing gargle of ice-cold water that would kill me if I were there to swallow it. I longed for basic things like being outside, feeling the cool air on my skin, or feeding my hunger. But there were small triumphs along the way, like being able to sit upright in a chair for the first time, or my vital signs getting a little bit better, and after months of not being able to talk, they finally took me off the ventilator. But within an hour, I used up all my oxygen, and they had to put me right back on. When I was healthy enough to sneak out of the hospital with my parents to go shopping, true story, or have my high school graduation in the middle of the surgical ICU, the doctors decided to discharge me from Columbia Presbyterian. Gratitude. I thought that finally being discharged from the hospital would take me right back to my old life. I imagined jumping into my old bed, having dinner with my family, and of course, singing out songs from all my favorite musicals. After all, I was getting better, right? But no, I was headed for detour number 2. Identity shattered. I still couldn't eat or drink, and my old room was gone because my parents had moved us. Surprise! A different house and not even the same town. Who was I now, and what did home even mean anymore? Nothing was normal once I got out. I felt lost. But in that house, I discovered a second flower. Identity reimagined. To keep my mind off of food and drink, I locked myself in my room for 16 hours every day and journaled. I learned karate, I taught nursery school, and I picked up a new hobby. I hoarded a collection of every possible drink container, flasks, baby bottles, pitchers, and I'd spend hours just pouring liquid from one vessel to the next, imagining how a cold sip of water would finally feel down my throat. To keep my mind off of hunger, I started a chocolate business because I really wanted an excuse to buy candy. Identity reimagined. After a full year of not even an ice cube, I was finally allowed to drink clear liquids. Heaven. 2 ounces of water the first week, then 4, then 6. I couldn't wait to take my very first sip of water with the tiniest straw I could find. I took a sip, and then I remembered that water didn't taste like anything. Then I started to have a little fun with fluids. Since I didn't have a working digestive system yet, the surgeons actually created an opening in my neck. So anything I drank went through the opening and into a little bag. I would try to drink different colored juices based on what I was wearing so my bag would match my outfit. For Halloween, I drank cherry red Kool-Aid, and as the red liquid spewed from my neck, I took the bag off and said, "Do not be afraid, I'm a vampire!" I think I was the only one that got a kick out of that. All this time, I wasn't able to eat a thing. 3 years later, I was finally able to have food, thanks to my 13th reconstructive surgery, followed by surgeries number 14 and 15, which were to fix whatever went wrong. My first bite of food was a frozen waffle on my 21st birthday. I thought after that I'd be happy, normal, and finally feel like me again, eating waffles for breakfast. But no, that led me to detour number 3, memories. Eating food made me feel, but it also made me remember. Even things I didn't want to remember, things that I thought a coma had permanently repressed, like the hurt and confusion I had felt burning in my gut, hidden from my family. Suddenly, I was overwhelmed with alarming memories of having been sexually abused by my voice teacher, who was also my godfather, for months before this all began. This huge role model in my life had shattered my trust in an instant, plaguing me with anxiety that grew worse and worse until a stomachache changed my world forever. My abuse had been a really painful, stressful secret. And I didn't have my numbness to protect me anymore. Now I was overwhelmed with flashbacks of the betrayal I felt and the undeserved shame that would take years to work through. I didn't have that numbness to protect me anymore. And in that clearing, I could feel the hurt. But in the clearing, I discovered my third flower, healing. Although these raw, forgotten emotions were overwhelming, for the first time, I could feel. And I realized I'd rather feel everything than nothing at all. I started to feel a little bit of myself materialize and let me know that I'm still in there. Maybe it's the beginning of me finding me again. Healing. But what did I find? Detour number 4. Hope shattered. After what I thought was my 15th and final surgery, my wound burst open when I was in California, and I was airbacked back to Connecticut to Yale Medical Center for emergency treatment. Once again, I was forbidden to have a morsel of food or drink a drop of liquid, and doctors couldn't tell me for how long. They said, let's just see what happens. Try to be patient. Not today, but what about today? What about tomorrow and the day after tomorrow? I am never getting to college. All I wanted to do was act. I studied, found the best teachers. An idiot. I'm sick of being a patient, a science experiment. They call me a miracle. Really? What kind of miracle? People look at me like I'm a freak in a sideshow. Oh, poor Amy. And I'm supposed to put on a smile so they don't feel bad. Well, I'm so glad they don't feel bad. Makes everything so much better. I can't stand being treated like a child. I can take care of myself. If I fall, I'll get up. Don't help me. Nobody has any answers, not even the doctors. I thought my parents knew everything. They can't even help me. This sucks. I wish I could. I wish I was a fourth flower. Stuck in that hospital room for months without any food or water. My mom started bringing me cheap art supplies to the hospital. The day I picked up a paintbrush for the first time, my world changed forever. I had found a way to express emotions and thoughts that were too overwhelming for words. Whatever I do, I tend to do obsessively. And soon enough, I was about to put up an art show with 70 of my paintings on display. Through expression, I was healing. But healing wasn't a straight path. Healing took me straight to detour number 5. Trust shattered. Wounds kept reopening, stitches burst loose, and I learned that no surgery is a guarantee. Many surgeries later. But now I had a life-saving flower of expression on my side. Expression planted the seeds for the next flower on my detour, courage. Being able to create filled me with a fierce knowing that somehow I would turn out okay. Making art gave me the courage to share my heart with the world and to take my detour where I had always been able to call home, the stage. I went back through thousands of my old journal entries and I put together a one-woman musical about my life, a story made possible by detours. I had never spoken about what had happened to me before, and now here I was bearing it all and singing about it for total strangers and New York theater critics. Expression, courage. As fearless as this may have seemed, telling my story just made me feel normal. I didn't feel like an outcast anymore, forever exiled from the world I used to know as a teenager. As I took my final bow to a standing ovation, I thought I had made it back for sure. But the ending of my show was just the beginning of detour number 6, total wipeout. 4 days after my sold-out run in New York City, I had my 27th surgery and my first elective one. This was supposed to make me normal, which was weird because I was never really normal before. I knew this was a risky surgery, but it was supposed to clear up some leftover kinks that I had. So there I am, lying in the gurney of the operating room, when the surgeon bends over and whispers in my ear, "So, are you sure you really want to do this?" So with my last ounce of strength, I lifted up my head and I said, "I just did a one-woman show. I can do anything." Apparently not everything. 3 extra surgeries, a few catheters, and 2 months at Mount Sinai later, I woke up with more problems than I came in with. But I also woke up to my 6th and most precious flower, Invincible Identity. For the first time in my life, who I was felt larger than my medical circumstances. The permanent damage that the surgery has done can't take away from all the flowers I've collected from all of my detours so far. So I went and I picked all my flowers. Gratitude, identity reimagined, healing, expression, courage, invincible identity. And with my flowers in my hand, I took a deep breath and I said, "Oh, what the hell? Go big or go home." I made 3 big decisions. At 25 years old, I applied to college. Still in my hospital gown and IVs, I called 2 theaters and booked another run of my one-woman musical. And although I've never even dated in my life, I was so lonely and I really wanted to do some creative writing, so I made an online dating profile for myself. 11 years later, here's where my detour is now. 11 years later, in front of you today. Those 3 decisions changed the course of my life. I'm finishing up my 3rd year at Hampshire College. I've been touring my one-woman musical across the country for 4 years, not only to theaters, but as a mental health and sexual assault prevention program. And the day I made an online dating profile for myself, some guy named Brandon messaged me. 4 months later, he proposed, and we're celebrating our 10-month wedding anniversary. And all of those flowers made for a really wonderful wedding bouquet. That's when I realized that a detour is not a dead end. We just have to keep going long enough to reach that clearing and find those flowers. You may not know where your detour is headed, and it may be terrifying at times, but that's okay. Even with wounds that still haven't healed, and that's not a metaphor, I'm on the road. Every little twist and turn has made me who I am, and I like who I am. That's what makes me a detourist. A detourist learns that no turn is a wrong turn. No matter what, they forge ahead. Even if they were forced onto that path, they keep their minds and their hearts open to what they might discover there, to find the flowers that make their life beautiful, meaningful, even spiritual. Sometimes that's our only choice. So when you hit that unexpected detour, remember to keep going and find your flower. It's all about the journey that makes your life beautiful. Thank you.